G'day, and welcome to the AHDC podcast series, Health Design on the Go. I'm your host, David Cummins, and today we're speaking to Anne Kovakovic, who is the Foresight and Innovation Leader at Arup Australasia. Based in Brisbane, Anne has worked for Arup for over 10 years. Anne is a qualified engineering scientist and has a PhD in aerospace engineering. As a qualified Green Star assessor, board member for Net Positive Design and Food Connect Shed, Anne's work focuses on creating sustainable futures with foresight. We try to analyse futures to make informed decisions and that we should take care to create the future we choose. Welcome, Anne. Thank you for your time to be here.
Thank you, David.
I don't think we've ever had an aerospace engineer on our podcast series yet, and I'm pretty sure we never will again. I have to ask that question first. What is an aerospace engineer and how did you end up in sustainability space?
Well, there's actually quite a few of us aerospace engineers in sustainability. So I got into it mostly because I was very interested at university in maths and physics and engineering, and I was doing a lot of work there and started to get interested in rockets and how we launch rockets. And so I did a PhD in that. And then, as you can imagine, there are not so many careers that you can always go into directly from rocket engineering. And so one of the things we learn a lot is around modeling. So doing CFD modeling got me a role in building physics, and I sort of started from there, went into energy modeling, and then started to broaden out into sustainability and other elements like Green Star and other rating systems. And there are quite a number of us that have got a similar background. And I suppose the other thing for me with sustainability is that you really need to think differently. So it makes a lot of sense if you've done something that really focuses on looking at what's happening and really sort of having a very scientific background and a method for analysing things. So I think it works quite well for questioning how we do things.
So you take the principles of aerospace engineering, which is generally speaking a difficult problem, and apply it to sustainability. Is that generally right?
I think a lot of it's around, I suppose, being able to understand, how to assess things. So how to do computational design in any type situation. So where we might be in aerospace and engineering analysing fluid flows that are going Mach 5, we're doing that at a much lower speed in buildings, but we're still looking at fluid flows and a lot of the principles of how you put in the boundaries and how you make assumptions are all quite similar, or there's certainly a very close parallel there to allow you to be able to understand how to transfer the skills, I think.
I'm just still in awe by that qualification, so very impressive. And the other thing you actually do now is you're the Foresight and Innovation Leader at Arup Australasia. Innovation is probably something that Australia's been that little bit behind, especially when you compare it to Europe and other countries like America and Canada. How hard was it to create this role of innovation? Because I'm pretty sure most organizations don't have an innovation leader, and I think that's where huge leaps and bounds can be made through innovation and understanding design thinking and creating solutions to difficult problems.
Yeah, well, I suppose that both roles, foresight and innovation, coming together, I certainly found that as a sustainability engineer, a lot of the conversations we were having was about paybacks that were quite long paybacks compared to some of the costs that we were talking about in sustainability. So sometimes you have to have a longer term view at things so that you can get some of the initiatives for sustainability through. So that's where I started sort of in the space of longer term strategies. And I also think with sustainability, we're sometimes questioning how things are done. So you might be working on a project where a builder has done something the same way 50 times and they just want to do it that way. And sometimes you need to question that so that you can do it more sustainably. And I think a lot of, particularly when I started this particular role in about 5 or 6 years ago, a lot of sustainability was really focusing on that and how we could change the way we were doing things and be more innovative in the approaches. And I think we saw that with Green Star as well. I started bringing the innovation credits. There's really a very strong focus on new technologies and being able to sort of expand thinking. And so I think that's where the overlap is with with sustainability. And I do think we start to see innovation coming in quite a number of companies, and particularly I think successful companies have a big focus on innovation and allowing people to sort of explore into different spaces so that we might be able to do things better.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Like everyone knows that Apple, or most people know that Apple is considered one of the most innovative companies in the world and great success. They would call themselves innovators versus a tech company as a basis because they keep on challenging themselves and understanding the customer's needs versus giving the customer what they think they need. And I certainly think innovation is one of those amazing areas of science and thinking and logic where you actually have to use your whole brain to try and come up with a solution versus give people the solution that you think it is.
Absolutely.
So, as an innovation leader, especially with Arup, you have done some amazing work in the sustainability space. What is sustainability according to you and Arup, and what do you think are some of the challenges in the sustainability space in Australia?
Well, I think sustainability for me is really pushing the boundaries and trying to do really efficient buildings, but also questioning what we think of normal, and also focusing on what we want to actually get out of buildings, because I think we've almost become disconnected with what we need out of a building. So when we first started designing buildings, we needed shelter, we needed protection from wind, noise, that kind of thing. And we still need those things, but we've done it, almost pushed it so far that we're completely disconnected from the outside. And so for me, sustainability is working out how we actually think of ourselves as part of nature and how we can connect and get what we need out of buildings, but do it in a way that we're actually responding to our needs, including health and well-being and comfort, and also our mental health and our physical health, and really rethinking what we think of buildings at the moment. I think some of the big challenges in Australia for sustainability, firstly, is that I think we like to have an answer. So we like to say, okay, this is what we use for glass, or this is what we use for facades. And also, we have a problem that is trying to get things done very quickly, not being able to experiment and not being able to challenge the brief. We've also got very fixed ideas about what comfort is and what those indoor requirements are for buildings. So it's quite difficult to create something that is climate responsive, create something that is suitable for the need for that particular use. So changing up what if you're in an office space to if you're in a cafe, and working out how we can connect to the outside. So having openable windows, having buildings that are orientated in the right way. So I think there are a lot of challenges that were sort of created by these fast-paced cities that need to really build up quickly, and with cost restrictions and time restrictions, we really start to a lot of trouble with meeting really good building designs in some instances.
Yeah, one of the biggest challenges that you touched on before is you do have the builder that's built that way their whole life, 20, 30 years. And so to change those habits are quite challenging, especially when the government or the client or whoever it is does put those restrictions of time and quality on there and program, when in actual fact, if you just took that little bit longer and did that little bit more research, not necessarily a little bit more money, but just that little bit more time, you can actually have a huge impact to the future of that building and society and community.
Exactly. And I think also what we're starting to see is that there's a lot of digital tools that are able to help us with some of those questions and some of those answers. So really being able to understand more about the materials that are going into our buildings and what's available, and thinking about things in a much more holistic through a long-term lens, then we're really able to start to create better buildings throughout our cities.
Yeah, I totally agree. Sticking with materials, at what point do you think sustainability should be considered? Is it at the conception phase or the feasibility phase? Because there are plenty of builders out there that talk about sustainability, yet they will have a generator there and they'll use different concrete as opposed to polymer concrete, which is a cost thing as well. Like, at what point in time, and who should be taking that responsibility to make sure that sustainability is the priority for the project?
I think with sustainability, the closer to the start of a project, like even before it started, when it's in concept, like, is when you get the easiest wins and the most impact. So with everything, and right from the start, the first question is, do we need to build this? Is there an alternative? Is there something, an existing building that we could repurpose? And then you work from there. You say, if we do need to build something, how do we build it efficiently? How do we make sure those materials are efficient? And also thinking about when that gets eventually repurposed, like, how do we recover those materials? So I think as close as you can to idea and inception is when you start to think about sustainability for the best wins.
Yeah, I agree as well. I find that sometimes in Australia, particularly the commercial sector and even to a lesser extent the defence force do have that consideration. But in the world of health, it just doesn't seem to be a priority for many reasons: scope, time, governments, whatever that may be. So, what do you think the health sector, if not the construction sector and Australia as a whole, have to do to try and change that mindset to make it a priority at such an early phase?
I guess it's trying to change that whole mindset about what health is. And when we say, oh, we're going to build this health building, we really need to think about well before that, we've actually got a thought leadership publication that looks at healthcare ecosystems and really thinks about how health is distributed throughout our entire cities and is not only part of the building that you're putting together, but also part of the broader ecosystem that can come together and provide people with a healthcare solution. And I think when we start to think of that in a much broader sense, that's when we can start to say, oh, like, how do we design so that we have different components throughout our cities that are affecting our health? How do we get people to feel responsible for their health and to look after their health from a personal perspective? How can we really break down those barriers? And then I think once we start to think that way, then we put a little bit less stress on that. This building is going up now and we need to have these certain restrictions with it. So I think that will give more flexibility as to how we design the brief and also, how we move those elements into people's life and take the big burden of cost from the model of a healthcare facility out of just focusing on that one building.
Yeah, it is quite ironic that the Australian healthcare sector is one of the biggest polluters in Australia, yet they don't actually prioritise the sustainability and reducing the carbon footprint of the building itself, from procurement to the life cycle. I mean, operational costs are huge in a hospital. There's many, many opportunities to try and reduce that operational cost, but due to budget constraints, scope restraints, priorities from the government or the client, it is quite ironic that we're one of the biggest polluters.
Absolutely. And the fact that when you go into a healthcare facility, you don't always feel like you're necessarily in a really healthy space that's really contributing to your health and well-being. I certainly know from experience, my children sort of being in a facility for a long period of time and feeling very disconnected to the outside, not being able to see out a window, not being able to sort of access outdoor spaces. There are certainly some that do allow you to do this, but a vast majority do make us feel very isolated and disconnected.
Yeah, I agree. Just continuing with your career thus far, you've done a lot of work overseas. You've done a lot of work in the sustainability space. You've done a lot of work of innovation and strategy around the world. How do we compare in Australia in sustainability in comparison to places like Thailand, Canada, Europe, America? How do we fare? Do you think we're behind the eight ball? Do you think we're ahead of the game? Is it a bit of a to and from, depending on the topic?
Yeah, I mean, I think certainly Australia has shown in green building ratings and things like that they do really punch above their weight. There's quite a lot of success. I think there are a lot of different elements that people have focused on around the world. And I mean, you bring up Thailand there as one example. And I think what we see in Thailand is quite a number of really interesting and innovative projects. It might not be like across all of their projects, but there's a precinct, Forestiers, which is going in where all their buildings are well rated. They're putting in an urban forest. They're really push the boundaries on energy efficiency, health, and throughout all of their buildings. And I think we see a number of those great case studies. And I mean, they're of interest because they're starting to think about the people that might want to live in these places. And when we think of aging populations where people really want to extend their healthy lives as much as possible and live in a place that's really focused on that, I think there's a lot of opportunity around the world to really think about where those big focuses are. So I think there are a few really great examples that we see. But certainly green buildings in Australia have really pushed a lot of those boundaries and been quite successful.
Yeah. So keeping that in mind from a global perspective, how realistic and how achievable do you think it is to try and be net zero by 2050 and halfway, but I think it's 2030? Like, is it it's a good goal, but is it achievable? And what do you think we need to do to try and achieve that?
Well, I suppose when I look at it, it scares me a lot. These are the kind of things that we've been talking about, not for the last couple of years, but the last 20 years. And it's really only recently that we've seen these targets really start to be set and understood how important they are. So it worries me that the amount of time it's taken to get us to this point. But at the same time, I think we can't just say, oh well, it's impossible, we can't do it, and give up. It's just if we don't do absolutely everything we can to get to this point, then we will be living in a world that is for even more with climate change than we are now. And we just, with even in the last couple of weeks, last few days, even seeing the floods overseas and seeing all of the other aspects of climate change that are really affecting us. I think we're going to start to see, even in the last few days, seeing the floods in Pakistan and all the bushfires that we've had over the last year, we're going to end up in a climate that is completely unlivable. So if we don't do something about it, we end up in that point. So there's really no point saying we can't achieve it, let's just give up. And I suppose just the fact that we really are seeing so much action and so much focus on going to net zero and then beyond net zero, I think what we'll see is we'll start to achieve really good reduction goals, and then we're also going to have to start exploring how we actually draw down carbon from the atmosphere as well. And I think we'll start to see research ramping up into those options and really, really moving the needle. And I just think there's no other option. We just need to work out how do we achieve it, and I'm hopeful that we'll be able to. I think there's great examples of, say, years ago people were saying that renewables will never take over, and now they're the cheapest form of energy. So I think it's just a matter of investing all our energy all our focus in the right spot, so that we are able to achieve these things.
Yeah, you're 100% right. And especially as renewable energy becomes cheaper, it really should be considered in the design phase for a hospital that will be 20, 30 years, 40 years there, to be relying on non-renewable energy. The price will just go up over the next 30, 40, 50 years. So to be focusing now in the design phase and the feasibility phase of hospitals or buildings that are to be sustained by renewable energy, it's very smart, because again, looking at that complete life cycle of the hospital or the building is pretty much one of the main goals of design, I think, these days.
Yeah, absolutely. And we need to start valuing that whole of cost of things. Obviously, like that power cost is increasing rapidly now. And if we don't sort of build that into what we're thinking of as the cost of hospital, then we will never be able to have these paybacks of when we invest in renewables and when we make decisions about urban greening and all these other valuable decisions that we need to make that we just don't really value for the right reasons and don't have the right valuing systems around yet.
Yeah, I agree. So finishing on a very positive note, because there's a lot of, I think, as you just said before, there's could be misconstrued as a lot of doom and gloom, but I see it as a good opportunity where even such things as the Australian Health Sustainability Council, conversations like this, podcasts, research, there's a lot of positive things coming out here. What's something that the individual can do and we can do as a community and everyone can do to try and help relieve that pressure? Because I think the only way through this is as a team and helping support each other and educating each other. What are some of the good positive take-home messages for our listeners?
I mean, I think there is a lot that everybody can do. And I think the thing is that we know a lot of these things. So we know that using our cars less or moving to an EV and still using that less, riding a bike, staying healthy and eating healthy, all of these things are less carbon intensive, more sustainable. And we sort of know all of these things. So it's a matter of actually appreciating what you have and moving in that direction and making sure you do all of those things that you know that you should do to be more sustainable. But I think the other thing is we've already seen this year that there's been a lot of people voting green. So really showing our politicians and our leaders that this is the future that we want. We want to have the right goals and targets in our legislation that will help us create the future we want. And I think people voting that way and also explaining to their leaders what they expect and helping them to understand what they need to achieve, I think is all things that we can definitely be doing to action a greener future.
Yeah, I think definitely every little bit helps, and we as in the Australian Health Sustainability Council, but also Australia is very lucky and very fortunate to have someone like you in Australia with your world of knowledge and also your research and also your passion, because without people like you, we wouldn't have those leaders in sustainability. So thank you very much as well.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anne, for your time. You have been listening to the Australian Health Design Council podcast series, Health Design on the Go. If you would like to learn more about the AHDC, please connect with us on our website or LinkedIn. Thank you for listening.